What is going on, everybody? It's Skills here with the Gaming Channel, and today during the State of the Game, it was pretty cool because they had the Associated Game Director on, and he focused his discussion on rebalancing for Title Update 6, AI difficulty, and how AI react to certain situations. But I'm gonna let him discuss all of that. I hope you guys enjoy this. I just cut this clip out, and I think you guys will really find this one interesting. Enjoy.
Sat down to think about what you can do with TU6, particularly in terms of, I know the difficulty rebalancing was one of the things that you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that was one of the big things.
What was going on there?
Yeah. So kind of the general idea was that when you were kind of playing like pre 1.6 in difficulty, the difficulty became a little unbalanced as you climbed from hard to challenge and challenge to heroic, right? And that was mostly because the bullet damage would continuously go up, but the explosion damage wouldn't. So that would really change the way that you played, right? Because explosions, in general, are really key to our combat and what we think makes for a fun combat experience, right? Throwers are there mechanically to basically get you to leave your cover, right? And then if you get someone like a sniper, their goal is to punish players being out of cover. So if you pair those two together, that's a synergy, and it creates, hopefully, an interesting puzzle for the player, right? Like, how do they deal with that situation? When that explosion component is kind of taken away, and a lot of players, right, we would see them eat grenades instead of trying to dodge out of the way. They would just kind of take it, and no big deal. It wouldn't take that much of their armor or whatever. So when that's taken away, we kind of ruin that synergy, and all of a sudden it kind of completely changes the way you play. But I think in kind of a less interesting way. So that's kind of the problem that we really wanted to solve, right? Secondarily, the other thing was kind of the time to kill, especially when you got into heroic. It was maybe bordering on, if you built really well, like it still felt, I think, pretty good and snappy. But if you hadn't completely optimized your build and things like that, which is kind of where we maybe you shouldn't be playing heroic. I don't know, but you're really skilled, maybe. So you can do it. Then those time to kill, like the time became maybe a little bit too long. It felt maybe a little spongy, things like that. And also you were getting killed really quickly. So the ultimate goal, right, was to say, hey, we have this explosion damage that's down here. The bullet damage is up here. What if we bring that explosion damage up here, but then globally we move that down a little bit?
Okay.
Right? So we bring them on par with each other, where they're supposed to be, really. But then we say, hey, let's also, because we're essentially making the game more difficult, after we do that, let's lower time to kill so it can be a little bit more snappy, and let's make sure that the enemies don't kill you quite as quick overall.
Okay.
Right?
And what is the result of that been, do you think? Because when you're going through that, you must obviously look at a lot of data and these sorts of things. What kind of things are you looking at to kind of evaluate if that's working? Yeah,
so internally and also using things like the PTS, we looked a lot at completion time, completion rate, downs, deaths, kind of all of those different statistics, right, to see if we're similar to kind of where we were before. And looking at the data, like, we are. So that's good. But if overall difficulty kind of remains the same, which was the goal, then what we're really asking you to do is kind of rethink how you play those harder difficulties, right? We're asking you to say, like, well, maybe you use a different strategy than you've been using, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen since TU6 has been out, obviously when changes happen, it can be a little bit of an adjustment, like
absolutely.
Right, and people can be like, oh, this feels different, and maybe there's a bit of a negative reaction.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty human, right?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I mean, this was something that we kicked around a lot internally. Like, do we want to make this change? And what it came down to is we, the team, believed that this was best for the game, that this was the most fun experience. We play tested it, and we said, you know what? This is actually just more fun, we think. So we believe in this. We think we should do this.
Yeah, I think I've seen from, I guess, just anecdotally reading a lot of what's been happening on the forums and on Reddit. You've seen that initial reaction being like, I don't like it, and then people are like, okay, I get it, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Chat. I mean, we haven't figured out how to do Twitch polls yet, but I mean, what do you think? I mean, let us know, because I think it would be a really cool conversation to have.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you have to trust your gut as a game designer.
Yeah.
You know, based on experience. Like, you've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
But we would love to hear.
But I was going to say, and it's also something that, obviously it is a relatively new adjustment, so it's entirely possible that maybe we didn't get it right, and maybe now that the floodgates have opened and everyone is having experience with it, and after a few weeks people say, you know what, maybe this is still a little bit too high or whatever, and we can adjust it.
Because like you say, it does change the way people have to play.
Yeah.
Someone says they're okay with it, that's cool. I'm glad.
Cool.
All right, I'll take that upstairs and say, Twitch chat said it's fine, so that's cool. All right, so there's been discussions about the way, we had some things with NPC AI, which was a bug at the time, about how they would just rush you. Right?
Yeah, right.
There's been some things you've been working on that address the way NPCs think about starting an encounter. It's not a bug, but there's been some changes you've made.
Yeah.
What was happening before 1.6 and what have you done now?
Right. So to give a little context as to why we did this. So in Division 1, NPCs a lot of times would kind of enter combat, guns blazing and things like that, right? And they would just immediately start firing as they entered combat. That kind of gave the perception they weren't very protective of their lives, because they were super aggressive from the start, right? And that was something that we really identified, especially with our work with hunters and things like that, that like, hey, actually, this is not the best way to approach this, and really our AI should be a bit more intelligent entering combat. So with Division 2, our AI would always search for cover first thing, right? They would sprint to cover as soon as any gunfire would happen or something like that to make sure that it looks like they're protective of their lives, but also tactically it makes a lot of sense, right? And then if they have a heavy weapons in their fire team, that heavy weapons would lay down cover fire and continuously suppress while his allies would get into cover. But if there wasn't a heavy weapons, which a lot of times there's not, right? You'd see the NPCs kind of run, and depending on the mission or maybe the part in the world, maybe those NPCs would be running, 30 meters or more. And that looks a little bit strange if they're just kind of sprinting, and, and you don't get that signaling either as a player to say, hey, there's enemies here. Like, yes, you have the mini-map and you have your HUD that pops up and it tells you you're in combat and your character actually goes down and stuff like that, but sometimes a bullet whizzing by is actually the best indicator that you're in combat, right? So, so making the change that NPCs now will basically, a couple will elect to lay down cover fire while they move into cover, so they won't be stationary. They'll kind of move while they do it, while the other ones rush into cover as quickly as they can. So you have a couple brave souls in the NPCs.
Sucks to be those guys. They basically
get mowed down by the agents, basically.
But they effectively would basically draw the short straw.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. The other thing that you mentioned before is the behavior of the big chungus dudes is a little bit different now than it was before TU6.
Yeah, that's right.
What's changed there?
Yeah. So one of the big changes we made to the tank archetypes, the heavies, right, was the way that they react to status effects. So crowd control, in particular, was really, really effective against tank NPCs. Probably too effective, right? And we've actually seen a lot of people talk about, hey, in Challenge and Heroic, like, tanks are a joke. Like, you just see CM mow them down, like, no big deal. And really, like, tanks are supposed to be kind of focal points in battles. And so I think contextually as well, it didn't make sense that they would, you have these skinny little dudes next to them and they're like reacting the same way to being, hit with tear gas or fire or whatever. Like, these are big, imposing guys that are completely covered with armor, right? So we looked at kind of each status effect, and basically they now react in a way that I think is more fitting for their kind of massive size and the intent for their gameplay, right? So when you set them on fire, for example, they're no longer going to flail their arms and stuff, right? They're just going to soldier on. They're still going to take damage, all of that stuff, but they're basically going to kind of shrug it off. Same thing with when they get shocked. Yeah, you'll get them down, but they're going to fight through it, and they're going to get through it a lot quicker.
Straight up honey badgers.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. Just like, I'm on fire.
Exactly, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of the general premise. You know, and then you can also see with things like blind or confuse, which maybe this has already been discovered. I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere. But if you blind a tank that is using a melee weapon, right? So the outcast tank or the secret underground tank.
Spoilers.
If you blind them or confuse them, what they'll do is they'll remember where they last saw you, and they'll actually rush forward, or stumble forward actually, to where you last were, and like basically try to kind of swing around and hit where you used to be.
Okay.
So you can use that to your advantage, right? You can set up traps, you can put them through choke points. There's all sorts of kind of interesting ways, hopefully, to interact with that system if you know how to use it.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that logic.
Yeah, cool.
Very, very cool. And there's also been some small changes to player turrets.
Yes.
Because NPCs will view those differently now?
Yes, that's right. So previously, the assault turret, which I abused a lot as a player, I would just kind of set it up and just kind of hide and heal and do things like that. And the NPCs really didn't care much about it, right? They would continuously just kind of focus on you. And that had everything to do with the way that they perceive the turret. They perceive the turret as much less of a threat than a player, which, to be fair, is probably true in most cases. But what it meant was you could just kind of forget that your skill was there, and you could just play really passively and kind of take advantage of the fact that they weren't targeting that. So now, what happens is if you are really passive and you start hiding, the NPCs are going to start focusing your turret. So they will actively focus it a lot more than they used to.
Okay.
And so basically, if you are active and you're continuously playing, they're still going to focus on you, the player, and not your turret. But the minute that you begin to, you know, basically try to exploit it and stuff, they're going to switch targets and they're going to focus on your turret. Which, of course, you can also use to your advantage, right? You know, if you have a tank or an elite or something like that, and you really want them to focus on that thing for a little bit, you can maybe, you know, go around to cover, use a high line of sight blocker, flank them, you know, and hit them in that way.
Yeah, again, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I do see some people in chat saying that they love the changes to heavies. Very cool.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
I need to kind of get back in and experience that myself. I'll be streaming next Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to that. I do want to quickly say, Mixer, we do see you over there. Sorry, sometimes we focus on saying sometimes Twitch chat, but we have both chats up, so we're looking at both at the same time. We see you. Okay, that's kind of most of the big changes, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, there's a lot of bugs in it.
Yeah, and there were a lot of like little things with like the mini tank. You would kill the controller, and it was just way too effective after you kill the controller, like its owner. And now it is way less accurate. Has a longer wind-up time after you kill the controller, and actually, I'm not sure if we put this in our patch notes or not, but friendly fire is actually turned on. So it can actually start shooting its own teammates if you kill its controller. Because it basically goes into super dumb fire mode. And you can set off weak points, and there's all sorts of chaos that you can create with it. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.